Welcome to the Pod Circle podcast, where we bring practical tips and insights for every podcaster.
From aspiring podcasters to experts with hundreds of episodes under your belt and everywhere in between, these conversations dive deep into the topics that matter most to you.
All right, today we are answering one of the most common questions that podcasters ask. How do I monetize my podcast? Kyle, do you get asked this all the time in your line of work?
Yes. Oftentimes it's one of the first questions that I get. And part of me is like, wait, we haven't even launched the podcast yet. But I understand it's a good question. It's a common question, and we're gonna get into it today. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I think the majority of us get into podcasting because we want to have some end result, right? And financial gain, profits are going to be a big part of that. And yes, we want to share a message with the world. Yes, we want to give away valuable content, but also we want to win and we want to convert. We want to convert our listeners to something, whether it's downloads, whether it's buying our product and our service, or whether it's just having another outlet to talk to our customers. And there's always an added benefit to have monetization around it. So
yeah,
I think the majority of the time when someone thinks about monetizing their podcast, they're only thinking about ads. Okay, how do I get ads? How do I get ad partners? How do I get people to support my podcast? And I'm hoping that this episode kind of opens up what people would consider monetization.
Yeah, totally. And I love the idea of someone starting their podcast with the end in mind. We're all about that. So we're going to get into it. So the first one we have here, one of the first ways you can monetize your podcast is to market yourself. In other words, you can bet on yourself. Organically, you can talk about your products and services in your episodes. Mm-hmm. You can do this by recording internal ads that you run either as pre-roll ads or mid-roll ads, which are just simply ads that you put kind of in the middle of your episode there. And just talk about what you do. And there's ways to do that organically. I hope to think that we do that with our podcast. We're a podcast for podcasters about podcasts. And so we're just hopping on here and talking about our knowledge and expertise.
And I think you can do that casually. You can do that organically. I hope that you notice throughout our episodes that it comes up really organically. And I think the biggest fear or qualm or even objection that people have to this type of monetization is saying, I don't want to self-promote. I'm not interested in that. That feels gross to me. And really, I would just challenge you to change your lens around that. You are providing value. Every time you show up with an episode, you're providing value for your listener. You're giving them free content, and you're building brand loyalty. And so self-promotion is only going to be off-putting if you're not connecting or providing a solution to someone's problem. So if every week you're providing a solution for your listener, you're going to have a little bit of cachet in that tank, and people are going to want to give to you. And you're providing a solution, promoting the products that go along with your podcast are going to go a long way because it's going to solve a problem to the next level. They're tuning in for a reason. And so I just want to encourage you that you're providing a solution to someone's problem in the podcast, and you can take it the next step farther. It's not gross. It's not self-promotion in a gross way because you're solving a problem.
Yeah. And if you feel gross about it and you're like, oh, I don't want to come off as one of these hacky self-promotionally people.
Yeah.
Odds are if you're asking the question, you're not.
You're not going to be. Yes.
You're not going to. If anything, you're probably not going to self-promote enough, and you need someone to nudge you to be like, hey, why don't you talk about what your expertise is a little bit more? So moving on to our second way to monetize your podcast is by offering a subscription. Mackenzie, you want to take this one?
Yeah, I think a lot of content creators in recent years have kind of utilized this model, and you'll see it across a lot of different things. You'll see it from authors and speakers, podcasters, video content providers. How do you tap into the audience you have? You see it with a lot of people who have a big Instagram following, and they've started a subscription model. I have a friend who's a dietitian, and she is blown up on TikTok and Instagram, and she now has a subscription model where she gives recipes and tips and tricks and all of that.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, she does it on a platform called Buy Me a Coffee. So there's a couple hosting platforms that we've really seen win. Patreon is kind of the number one in this space. And then Podia, Buy Me a Coffee, and even Apple Podcasts has kind of leaned into this. So I've explored what does the Apple Podcast subscription model look like because they saw Patreon winning and they wanted in on that. And so it's a really interesting model, and I see people winning a lot with it. One of my favorite podcast is called the Popcast, and they, I think, are one of the early adapters of this Patreon model, and they have really monetized their podcast that was just this thing and they did on the side, and now it's their full-time job. They have a couple different podcasts. They've built an entire network of shows, and every week, yes, they put out a free podcast. You can still get their original content for free, but every week they're giving extra subscription content. So they have an early access to their episode. They give you early access or exclusive access to bonus episodes. There's community forums. They put out exclusive PDFs. They put out exclusive in-depth show notes, question and answer with the host. Like, there's a lot of things that you can creatively start to think of. What are extra things that I could provide that don't have a lot of lift that people would pay for? Live recordings, I've seen that. Like, when they do a live show, only people who are subscribers get access to that. You could do a monthly newsletter. You could have exclusive merch. There's just a lot of opportunities here.
No doubt about it. That's a really great point. And we have clients too. Wire Talk with Karen Stubbs. She has a Patreon. It's been a long-running Patreon. She gives a lot of stuff away, and they have different tiers or whatever. But I think one of their lowest tiers is that they get an extra episode, an exclusive extra episode of the podcast every month, and she has done really, really well with that, and just has nurtured that core kind of support over the course of several years, and it's totally paid off. And now she does national speaking engagements and things, and it's pretty fantastic.
That's awesome. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about the podcast Smartless, and they partner with Apple, I believe. And so when you're in the Apple podcast app, you can actually see like the next episode that you don't have access to, and it kind of like whets your appetite. You're like, this is the guest next week, and I don't get to listen to it for a full week. But if I was a subscriber, I can listen to it now. So that's an interesting.
Oh, that's really cool. I didn't notice that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Third way that you can monetize your podcast is through selling ads to others in your space. And so, Kyle, can you talk a little bit about this? Because we talked about ads at the front end. So I think this is a space where you can lean into ads, but make sure you're doing it with people that make sense.
Yeah. I've got a good example of this one. We've got a client. They are very niche. They sell CBD products for pets, particularly for dogs. So, and I was chatting with someone from their organization, and they're like, they're just now getting to those numbers where they're considering selling ad spots to some of their partners that are also in this space. And a lot of those other people in the space have guested on the podcast. So there's a lot of crossover in their markets. Yeah. And they're kind of trying to figure out how to do it and how to price it and things. And so one of the things that I told them was like, hey, if you sell a pre-roll ad, that's almost a guaranteed listen to that ad. Yeah. So sell that for more, And I'm not going to pretend to be any expert on how to price that stuff. There's articles on that. I think it just depends on, one, how large your listener base is, how large and loyal that is. And then when you bring other people into the fold and you're advertising their products, I think it's just one of those things you just kind of have to test and iterate on. So you can sell pre-roll ads. And then what's great about, and we talk about this a good bit, we'll talk about it in later episodes as well, is utilizing dynamic advertising so that you can sell, they sell a pre-roll ad to a partner, and then the way that they can kind of package that to the advertisers, like, we're going to run this pre-roll across all of our episodes. So I think they've got, I can't remember, I think they've got 60 or 70 episodes at this point. And running a pre-roll ad across 70 episodes where they're averaging probably 400 or 500 downloads a month, that's a lot of guaranteed listens. So I think that they can charge a premium for that. Another thing, I don't know if this is perfectly on topic, but another idea that I put to them is that they could have an advertiser sponsor an episode. So they could say, this episode of Your Natural Dog is brought to you by our friends at blank. And here's what they do. And then you say, we're going to talk a little bit more about this at the end of the show and give some calls to action and things like that. But how they can kind of sponsor the episode. You can even do that in the episode specific artwork. I've actually seen Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend does this quite a bit, where in the actual artwork for that episode, it says State Farm.
Sponsored by?
Oh. Yeah, it'll be State Farm or whoever they have a big kind of partnership with. And obviously they'll run those ads in the middle of those shows as well. But I just think I think we're just kind of scratching the surface on the different ways that we can do these just do ads and partnerships and sponsorships and these kind of things. And I'm beginning to think that it's less about getting these huge download numbers and more about just finding those really strategic partnerships where there's a lot of alliance, but also not a conflict of interest and partnering up.
I think it's really interesting. It kind of goes to that first point we were talking about, is that if you have an ad that connects with your audience, it's going to be the most effective.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm not an expert on ads as well, but HubSpot, who is kind of really strong in the marketing space, claims that the average podcast ad costs between $10 to $50 with additional fees, way more than that when you've got a high listenership and mostly when you've got high engagement. And so you don't have to have insane listenership as long as you've got engagement. And if your fans are loyal, if your audience is loyal, and you're offering them something that connects and is in the same lane as something that you're already talking about, that's going to be the most successful. You kind of jumped on point 4, which is monetize your podcast by selling sponsored segments. And so you could do segments or the whole show. This show is sponsored by, this segment is sponsored by. A couple of examples might be, let's say you're a finance show, and you are going to say, this segment is sponsored by our online investing platform, whatever, let's name it, Q Finance. I don't know. But, if you've got a segment that's going to talk about, like, here's some market trends, and they always sponsor this particular segment about market trends. Or let's say you're a show that's all about, like, motherhood, and you're sponsored by a local toy store. And they're going to tell you, like, here are the toys that we're seeing that are winning in this space that are going to be a win for you and your kid learning, or whatever. I think you can really tap into their specialty, your specialty, and align your interests, as you're saying. So
that's really good.
Let's talk about that last point, because we utilize this, and I think it's really great.
I do too, yeah. So the last point is monetize your podcast by using affiliate links in your show notes. So the obvious one there is setting up an affiliate partnership with Amazon. And we refer, PodCircle, we refer a lot of podcast gear. So microphones, headphones. We have a whole PDF that has recommended, like, our tried and true recommended podcast recording gear. And so we linked all that stuff out to Amazon and have an affiliate partnership. It's very simple to set up, I'll say. If you've never done it, it's really simple to set up. We also have affiliate partnerships with a few other services that we use. One is Transistor, which is our preferred podcast hosting platform. Yep. And then with Riverside, which records our high quality audio and video, which we're on right now. So very simple partnerships with them, very easy and simple to set up. And we get a small kickback every time someone follows one of those links and checks out and enjoys one of those services or one of those products. And it's just another, it's probably not going to start out as this huge quote unquote cash cow thing, but you're using your platform to sell other people's products and services. So why not get a little bit of a kickback on those in an easy way that you kind of set it up and drop the links in to your show notes. So let's say you have a podcast and you're interviewing an author this week, and it's a pretty well-known author. Drop the link to their book, obviously, in your show notes, but also make sure
it has the affiliate link on it.
It's the affiliate link. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and the thing about Amazon affiliate is that it's no cost to your listener or the person that's clicking on it. Right. The actual fee goes to Amazon. It doesn't go to your listener. And if you're making money on things you're already recommending, that's what I think I've noticed in any time I've used affiliates, is that there are things I'm already going to be talking about. There's things I'm already a big fan of and going to be singing their praises. So why not partner with them? I think we think about that with Transistor and Riverside. There's two things we would already be bragging on. So we've created partnerships with them. I love that.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense, and it's a very low lift way to, like I said, just to get a little bit of a kickback for using your platform to promote others' products and services. There's nothing wrong with that.
So we hope that we have expanded your view of how you can monetize your podcast today. It doesn't just have to be ads. You don't have to wait until you have thousands of millions of downloads to start making money. You can start today where you are. And if you are on the front end of starting your podcast, we want to make sure that you know about our complete podcast starter kit. It is a free download, and in it you will find absolutely everything you need to start out, from checklists to that equipment guide that Kyle was talking about, to how to better your interview skills and how to do remote interviews. So we're really proud of this, and you can find it at podcircle.com/start. Anything to add on that, Kyle?
I think that's it. I think you summed it up really well.
All right. Happy podcasting, y'all.